Everybody, Bennett for the Bennett Podcast, and I am certain that we are in a great place for fantasy wargaming. And I've had to think about it, and I've had to look around, and I've felt how happy and excited I am about all this stuff going on in the hobby at the moment. And you know what I think? We might be wandering into a new golden age of fantasy wargaming. Alright, you may think that's a bit of hyperbole, but bear with me a second because there is some awesome stuff going on out there, and I haven't felt like this for fantasy wargaming in a very long time. It feels like there's a lot of stuff that's coming back, that's realigning, and it's doing so in a way that really threatens the heck out of my wallet. Right, the first of the things I want to celebrate today is the old world. Now, there are those of you out there who are like, the old world, not sold, like this is the same game from years ago with better models and in some cases the exact same models. And you know what? Do you know what? That's not a bad thing. Better rules with the same and or better models. I genuinely don't know what more you could want. So you guys will know that I am an old school wargamer, and I was there from 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition, 6th edition. 6th edition was the peak, 7th, 8th, the end of the old world, and then the return of the old world. And it is booming, it is really popular, and the fact that they've just been able to kind of create their own narrative inside of it and explore it and bring in Cathay and bring out new armies like the Slayer army that's come out and the new ways to play like Battle March, which I am absolutely over the moon about. That's something I'm really excited about. Smaller games of the old world is such a great way to test out different armies, to just tick that little hobby box. I've built a little 500 point army, and then I'll expand it to 1,000 points, and then I'll expand it to 1,500, then I'll expand it to 2,000. It gives you like a cool way of kind of brewing up, and I'm really sold on it. So the fact that the old world is back makes me extra happy. It just feels right that that way to play is there again, and they're constantly bringing out stuff, which I think is the most important thing here for like the golden age era of it, right? It's because you're bringing out more and more stuff. It's a mainline game. They have got this old world almanac just come out. There's new armies in it, essentially new army lists for it, a different way to play, and just the fact that they keep bringing out more product, more models, more rule books. They're keeping it alive, and by all accounts it sounds like we're hurtling towards an updated 2nd edition. Fantastic. So the fact that there is a big old rank and flank war game from Games Workshop around, even if you don't want to play it, you can see it, you can feel it, and it feels right. Because rank and flank war games, that's the fun part of fantasy. There's a great, and we're going to look at some other games, so we're going to talk through some other stuff that's really great in fantasy wargaming. But when you think about Warhammer, when you think about fantasy wargaming, you've got RPGs on that side, and you've got big battles on this side. And Mantic are just dropping 4th edition of Kings of War with some of the best models they have ever done. Now they've been bringing out Champions recently, which is a small version of Kings of War with like a few units, and kind of like what I just talked about for Battle March, like a way to get into playing without having to invest 2 years and £3,000. You can pay 35 quid and you're good to go, and it kind of gets you in. Now they've brought out some new models for those ranges. You've got some new cavalry, you've got some great new heroes, and they've been looking really good. They've also just completed and have dispatched Warpath, which has been very good. And given how this is just 10 mil stuff, like there's a lot of detail and there's a lot of fun to be had. So Mantic's miniatures on the up. Games Workshop's miniatures are the same and better. Mantic's miniatures are getting even better, and I love it. So they've just released, well, not just released, they've just put on pre-order basically 2 big releases. One is a brand new faction, and one is some fantastic models for the Trident Realms that makes me very excited. So, you know, we've got these big old trolls, these water trolls. These are brand new sculpts, and they are an absolute load of fun. You've got the placoderms here, which are basically water lizardmen. Incredible models. They look so good. And I guess the other thing for me that I'm that makes me so excited about this. It's not the brand new army, it's the fact that they are delving into a brand new narrative. So the old world is alive with a brand new narrative set in the past. Cathay are coming in, Cetra's trying to make a big bad thing happen. They're having this big old battle and there's stories being told with big battles. Mantic are doing exactly the same thing, but in their own setting. So you've got this brand new army of dog-headed wizard haters, which are the Zikali Empire. See if we can show off a couple of those models now for those of you who've not seen so far. They've got these, just picture an army of gnolls, an army of eastern gnolls with some humans there as well, and they are coming across and they are trying to end magic in the Mantic world, because people can't be trusted. So there's this narrative coming here as well. I've lost my page now. So there's this big narrative happening, and a whole new army with a bunch of brilliant models, really dripping in theme, is coming as well. And they've got these invasion books, the expansion books. The first one's called Invasion. There's 6. Every 6 months, Mantic are going to be dropping a new book, and in that book is updated armies for the updated army rosters for 3 or 4 armies. Very much like the arcane journals. Like the old world will drop an arcane journal, there's a couple of different army lists in there to give you different puzzles to solve that advances the narrative. That's exactly what's happening over here with Mantic as well, and that is just so exciting, because that means we've got 2 big battle games for fantasy with unveiling narrative happening, and that is new releases, new stories, new ways to be involved, and new things to kind of be a part of. That is absolute golden age for me. Now the cool thing about Mantic is that Ronnie said there's going to be some Armada ships coming out for them as well, so you can link that in. There's going to be some more champion stuff, the smaller scale, the smaller army kind of skirmish game. It's not really a skirmish, but it's kind of a smaller version. There's going to be more stuff for that coming out, and they're going to have global campaigns. So Mantic are in a place now where every 6 months there's going to be a new book with some new units, and then they're going to have narrative campaigns across the world like we used to have. And man, that is just so exciting. And you know, Cathay have just landed in Fantasy Battle. They brought a great big dragon, and you know what, the Zikali Empire have just landed in Panithor, Mantic's world, and they also brought a great big dragon. Now back in Games Workshop land, obviously the other reason I'm very high on fantasy at the moment is there's a brand new version of Blood Bowl coming at some point this year. It was previewed about a month ago. We've not heard anything else yet. Over a month ago. Man, come on. I want this box. I want this new edition. So you've got 2 big fantasy games. 1 Games Workshop, 1 strong third party. You've got an alternate there, and then there's the alt of a small skirmish fantasy game in Blood Bowl. That's just the best game out there. Blood Bowl is just the best game. Just ask this Black Orc. It's the best game, inarguably, with great models and a great world and just a great game. So we've got big fantasy battles, you've got little fantasy skirmishes, fantasy football skirmishes. It's just such a good place. And then this is what's tipped me over the edge this week: a new dungeon crawler from Games Workshop. So Warhammer Quest Darkwater. Now this is taking place in the Age of Sigmar world, which is the new world that Games Workshop created 10 years ago when they blew up the old world. And then they brought the old world back. But this is going to have you as a knight and a paladin and a dwarf ranger and a mage, exploring an overgrown, diseased abbey and fighting demons and beastmen and chaos knights. Yes, like I talked about this when we did the little video about Warhammer Quest, but dungeon crawlers are so useful. Now they don't have to be the most mechanically deep games, they don't have to be the most crunchy game imaginable. You've got D&D for that. There's other games that you can play for that, but dungeon crawlers are the gateway game into the hobby. They're the game you play as a kid that makes you fall in love. They're the game that board gamers play that makes you fall in love with miniatures, that makes you open that door to these fantasy worlds. And not only do Warhammer have Darkwater coming out, but Mantic are going to be bringing out Dungeon Saga 2 at some point. It's just about to start development. Dungeon Saga Origins is a great little game that means you can pick up with some friends and not have all of the work to build an army. You just pick up and play. It's a board game. Now, I am particularly excited about the Warhammer Quest one because it's been a while since Warhammer Quest come out. I've been absolutely tantalized by the little nuggets of the 95 edition they've shown off, because it's just, it's the game, that and Hero Quest are the games that I was like, oh, what's this? And then it fell into Blood Bowl and Space Marines, and that's kind of, they are so useful as a gateway from board games to miniature war games. So we got two great big fantasy war games. We've got Blood Bowl to be something different. You've got a dungeon crawler coming from Games Workshop. And to be honest with you, there's also Age of Sigmar, which is bringing out just some of the most fantastic models in fantasy. Now, the game doesn't particularly tantalize me, but the world is interesting and the models are inarguably very, very, very exciting. So they've just doubled down and brought out a whole bunch of clickety-click Chaos Dwarves. They brought them back into the worlds of Warhammer in the way of bringing them into Age of Sigmar. And they are great models. Games Workshop make phenomenal models, and Age of Sigmar, just everything they do is really well executed. Now, in a very similar style to Mantic, it's alternate, right? It's kind of twisted fantasy. You've got the old world, which is classic fantasy tropes, and you've got Mantic, which is classic fantasy tropes with a Mantic twist and a very, very dark fantasy twist in the way of the abyssal demons and the Twilight Kin and the Night Stalkers, like some weird eldritch horror stuff there as well, which absolutely tantalizing. And Age of Sigmar is kind of like your fantasy tropes, but Saturday morning cartoonified, like He-Man up with high fantasy, low stakes. You got steampunk dwarves and all sorts of stuff going on, with arguably some of the best models that they produce are for Age of Sigmar. So we've got another fantasy game with round bases. You've got fantasy games with square bases, and Games Workshop are continuing to drive on Middle Earth as well. Like, they had the Rohan movie come out last year and they've been producing stuff for that. So it means that you've got so much choice. If you like fantasy gaming, you've got so much choice, and I think that's what makes me feel like it's the golden age. Because you look over there, the old world is growing. You look over there, 4th edition for Kings of War is growing with some of the best models I've seen in a long time. Middle Earth is still growing. Blood Bowl is about to boom. There's a new dungeon crawler coming from Games Workshop. It is just everywhere, and every single one of them looks like a really exciting new direction to take. And then there's genuinely some new directions to take. Warcrow is a game by the guys who produce Infinity, but it's the fantasy version. And these are probably some of the best models in fantasy gaming. So they have just produced some outrageous models, and this game is growing. Like, they launched with a couple of factions with some beautiful models and some beautiful painting, and they keep adding stuff to it, which just means that if you don't want to play a mainline game from Games Workshop or Mantic, if you want to play fantasy football, if you don't want to play in the world of Lord of the Rings or the world of Age of Sigmar, there's an advanced kind of skirmish game that you can play with just outrageously good models and dripping in theme. And then if you want to go old school, if you want that classic green base, red box vibe, you've got Argatoria, which we've got a lovely box of here to start building and playing with, because it just smacks of olden times, but with new productions. So you've got these 10mm fantasy models on the little square bases, and you've got that green flock vibe. You've just got these battles happening, and it just has such a cool vibe that you just look at and you're like, this is really interesting. I mean, look at the banner, because just look at that. You've got the old world with the old models and some new models. You've got Mantic doing a similar thing. You've got Age of Sigmar with some of the best models in fantasy. You've got all this stuff going on, but right there, if you want something different, if you want something smaller, if you want something more colourful and bold and just retro, you've got Argatoria at your fingertips. And then, do you know what? If you want a bit of naval, there's Kings of War Armada. If you kind of go, oh man, I miss Man of War a bit, here it is. It's better. You can get the STLs for it. You can order it from your friendly local gaming shop. And by the way, there's some fleets coming for it very soon, in a few months, I think, for the new faction for Kings of War. So this game is also alive. I'm very excited for this game to get looked at again, to get updated and to kind of just be brought back to its full-fleshed form. But the fact they're getting more fleets means you've got another game. So you've got big battles, you've got small battles, you've got tiny battles, you've got sea battles, and then you've got dead games. So Mini Wargaming are diving into Mordheim. Now Mordheim is a fantasy skirmish game by Games Workshop that died 20 years ago, but it has lasted so well in legacy that people are still playing it, and people are absolutely loving to watch these guys play through Mordheim. Now we've not even touched on 3D printing here. But if you take the fact that we've got 1, 2, 3 games companies producing incredible models and incredible games for fantasy, and then you've got sub games, and you've got dungeon crawlers, and you've got naval games, and you've got small scale games, and there's 3D printed versions and alts and options for all of that. I mean, we just reviewed this the other day. This is one part of an SDL Kickstarter. Just one. And we haven't even touched on one-page rules, which are, you know, just growing and producing physical models, not just 3D sculpts. I put to you, we are in a new golden age of fantasy wargaming. There is a game for everyone. There is a game for everyone, and there is a game for every budget. Fantasy wargaming, sci-fi wargaming, any wargaming, none of it's cheap, but you can get something that you want to play. And you know what? It's not dead. It's alive. There's new stuff coming. There's an environment to play in. There's a community to exist with. And I have not felt this joyous and excited and hopeful about the hobby since I was probably about 10. And that is just not what I was expecting for 2025. Anyway, I'm sure I've missed some great stuff, so please let me know in the comments what you're excited about for fantasy wargaming, and if you think I'm wrong, please tell me. But I think you're going to think I'm right, and I want to know which of these games you're most excited about. What's on your table? What are you playing? What are your friends playing? Because I put it to you, we are in a hobby golden age again. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more wargaming content. Happy gaming.